of Chief Adaeze was already bursting with life before the sun fully rose. Canopies lined the wide red earth compound, and women from 3 villages had gathered since 4 a.m., pots steaming with jollof rice and pepper soup, their wrappers tied tight as they walked. Mama Chidinma clapped her hands, ordering the younger girls about. "Bring more chairs, oh! The groom's family will soon arrive and we are not ready."
"Ngozi, where is that girl? Is she not supposed to be helping decorate the canopy?" Inside the small room at the back of the house, Adaeze sat before a cracked mirror, her hands trembling as the makeup artist, a slim girl named Rose, dabbed powder gently on her cheeks. "Adaeze, please hold still." Rose laughed softly. "You will smudge everything. Are you not happy? Today you are marrying Chief Daniel Okonkwo-Eze, the richest man from here to Owerri. Half of this village would kill to be in your shoes." Adaheze's eyes lifted slowly to meet her own reflection. She did not smile. "Rose," she said, "if I tell you something, will you promise not to tell it to anybody?" Rose paused, the powder brush frozen mid-air. "What kind of question is that on your wedding day? Talk now. What is it?" Adaheze's hands gripped the edge of the small stool. Her voice dropped low, that Rose had to lean in. "I cannot marry this man." Rose blinked, then laughed, thinking it was the nervousness every bride feels. Wedding day jitters. It is normal, my sister. By evening, you will... "Rose, I am serious." Adaeze turned fully now, her painted eyes wet, her chest rising and falling fast. "There is something about that family, something Daniel does not even know. If I marry him today, I will spend my whole life inside a lie. And I refuse to be buried alive in another woman's grave." Outside, the talking drum began, announcing that the groom's convoy had entered the village boundary. Cheers rose from the compound. Rose's hands were shaking now too. "What are you saying, Adaeze? What grave? Whose grave?" But Adaeze was already standing, already pulling off the veil pinned so carefully to her braided hair, her gown rustling as she moved toward the small window at the back of the room. "Tell my mother I love her," she said, her voice breaking. "Tell her I did this to protect her too. Tell nobody where I went. Not even you can know, Rose. It is safer that way." "Adaeze, wait! The wedding! The people outside! Chief Daniel!" Through the window, into the cassava farm behind the house, her white gown disappearing between the green leaves like a ghost swallowed by the morning fog. By the time the drummers reached full celebration outside, by the time Chief Daniel Okonkwo-Eze stepped out of his gleaming car in his white agbada, smiling at the cheering crowd, the bride he had waited 3 years to marry was already gone. And in the front row of chairs, an old woman, Daniel's grandmother, Beatrice, sat very still. Her hands gripped her walking stick so tightly, her knuckles turned pale. Her eyes, unlike everyone else's, were not searching the compound in confusion. They were staring at the empty window at the back of the house, as if she already knew. As if she had been waiting 15 years for this exact moment to arrive. The compound that was full of joy only 1 hour ago had now turned into a place of fear and confusion. The canopies were still standing. Big pots of jollof rice were still on the fire, but nobody was eating anymore. The talking drums had stopped. Instead, people were running around, calling Adaeze's name and asking each other what had happened. Chief Daniel Okonkwo-Eze stood in the middle of the compound, sweating badly. His white abada was already wet from the heat and the stress. In his hands was Adaeze's wedding veil. He stared at it as if he could somehow find an answer inside it. "Somebody should tell me what is going on," he shouted. "Where is my wife? Where is Adaeze?" Nobody answered. Then his eyes fell on Rose. Rose! Rose froze. Where is Rose? She was the last person with Adaeze. 2 aunties quickly brought Rose forward. The poor girl was shaking from head to toe. Tears were running down her cheeks. Daniel walked toward her. Rose, please, look at me.
Look at me.
Rose
What did
slowly
Adaeze
raised
say
her
to you?
eyes.
Please tell me.
What did Adaeze tell you? Where did she go? Rose opened her mouth, but no words came out. Daniel held her shoulders gently. Please, Rose, I am begging you. Tell me what she said. Rose looked around the compound. Everyone was watching her. Finally, she broke down. She said she could not marry you, sir. The whole compound became silent.
Mama Chidima stopped breathing for a moment. Why? Daniel asked, his voice shaking. Why would she say that? Rose wiped her tears. She said there is something wrong with your family, something you don't even know about. Daniel stared at her. What are you talking about? Rose's voice became weaker. She said if she married you, she would be buried alive in another woman's grave. People gasped. What does that even mean? Someone whispered. Rose shook her head quickly. I don't know, sir. I swear I don't know. Those were her exact words. Daniel slowly turned around. His eyes landed on Beatrice, his grandmother. She was sitting quietly under the canopy. She had not moved. Her walking stick was resting between her legs and her face looked serious. Daniel walked toward her. Grandma. The old woman did not answer. Grandma, what does that mean? She looked up at him. What does Adaeze know about this family? Beatrice looked away. Nothing. The girl was simply scared. She will come back. Daniel could not believe what he was hearing. Grandma, look at me. He knelt beside her chair. You know something. Beatrice remained silent. I have known you all my life. I know when you are hiding something. Please, Grandma, if there is something wrong with this family, tell me. For a few seconds, the old woman looked at him. Her eyes became wet. It was clear that she wanted to say something. But then she looked around and saw all the people watching them. Her face changed. There is nothing to tell you, she said. Go and look for your wife. That is what matters now. And that was exactly what Daniel did. He searched everywhere. He went from village to village. He traveled to Owerri, Aba, and Port Harcourt. He showed Adaze's picture to bus drivers, traders, church workers, and anyone who might have seen her. He even paid 2 men to help him search for her. But Adaeze was nowhere to be found. Daniel also went to see Adaeze's mother, Mama Ijoma. The moment Mama Ijoma saw him, she started crying. My daughter would never do this to me, she said. She held Daniel's hands tightly. Something happened to her. I know my daughter. She would never leave without telling me. Daniel tried to stay strong. I will find her, Mama. I promise you. But deep inside, he was losing hope. 1 month passed. Then 3 months. Then 6 months. Still, there was no Adaeze. The people who had been helping with the search slowly stopped. The men Daniel had hired finally gave up. The village also started telling its own story. Some people said Adaeze was an ungrateful woman. Others said she simply changed her mind and ran away. Some even said she had found another man. But Daniel refused to believe any of them. He kept Adaeze's picture inside his wallet. He refused every woman his family tried to introduce to him. Years passed. 1 year became 5. 5 became 10. Then 15 years passed. Daniel never stopped wondering what really happened on his wedding day. And there was one other person who never forgot that day. Beatrice. As the years passed, the old woman became quieter. She stopped talking about the past. But the secret seemed to follow her everywhere. Then, 15 years after Adaeze disappeared, Beatrice became very sick. One evening, she sent for Daniel. He rushed to her room and sat beside her bed. The old woman looked very weak. Her breathing was slow and her hand felt cold when Daniel held it. Daniel, she whispered. Yes, Grandma. There is something I must tell you before I die. Daniel's heart began beating faster. What is it?
and Beatrice looked at him. "It is about your grandfather." Daniel became still. "And it is about this family." He leaned closer. "And it is about the reason Adaeze ran away from you on the day she was supposed to become your wife." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. For 15 years, he had waited for this moment. "Please, Grandma," he whispered. "Tell me everything." Beatrice closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them again. "Find Adaeze first." Daniel frowned. "Why?" "Because only she can tell you the rest." The old woman took a painful breath. Then she whispered, "What your grandfather did, it was not done to our family." Daniel stared at her. "It was done to hers." Before Daniel could ask another question, Beatrice closed her eyes. "Grandma?" But there was no answer. "Grandma!" Daniel grabbed her hand. For a few frightening seconds, he thought she was gone. Then the old woman slowly opened her eyes one last time. "Find the girl," she whispered. And then she said nothing more. Daniel sat beside her bed, completely shocked. After 15 years, he finally had a clue. But he also had a bigger question. What had his grandfather done to Adaeze's family? And why had Adaeze believed that marrying Daniel would destroy her life? 400 kilometers away, in a small market town called Inquere, a woman was selling tomatoes. She had lived there quietly for many years. Nobody in that town knew her real story. Nobody knew where she had come from. Nobody even knew that the woman once had another name. Then, one afternoon, an old woman walking through the market suddenly stopped. She stared at the tomato seller. Her eyes widened. The tomatoes fell from her hands. "Adaeze?" The woman selling the tomatoes looked up. The old woman stepped closer. "Adaeze Okonkwo?" The woman froze. It was a name she had not heard in 15 years. A name she had spent years trying to forget. The old woman screamed, "Adaeze! Adaeze Okonkwo, is that really you?" And for the first time in 15 years, Adaeze knew that her past had finally found her. The tomato stall nearly overturned as the woman's scream echoed across the busy Inquire market. Traders paused mid-haggle, heads turned, and the woman everyone in that town knew simply as Mama Ronki, quiet, hardworking, always minding her business, stood frozen, a basket of pepper slipping from her fingers and scattering across the dusty ground. "Adaeze Okonkwo, is that you?" the tomato seller repeated, stepping closer, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Chai, it is you! I would know that face anywhere. Where have you been? Your mother has been mourning you like the dead for 15 years. Every eye in the market turned toward them. Adaeze's hands trembled. For 15 years, she had built a quiet life in Inquire. A small provision shop, a teenage daughter named Jessica, who did not know her mother's real name. A peace she had paid for with total silence. And now, in one careless moment, that silence was cracking open. "Please," Adaeze whispered, gripping the woman's arm. "Please keep your voice down. You don't understand." But it was too late. Word travels faster than wind in a Nigerian market. By the time Adaeze rushed home that evening, her hands still shaking, a motorcycle was already speeding towards the express road, carrying the news to a phone line that would ring in Umuahia before midnight. 3 days later, a car pulled up outside Adaeze's small shop. She knew, even before she looked up from arranging her tins of milk, exactly who it was. Daniel stepped out slowly. 15 years had put grey in his hair and lines around his eyes, but his gaze, when it met hers, was the same gaze from 15 years ago. Searching, wounded, desperate for answers. Adaeze, her hands froze on the shelf. Slowly she turned. Daniel. Her voice cracked on his name, like she hadn't allowed herself to say it in 15 years. Jessica, 14 years old, appeared in the doorway behind her mother, confused by the tension thick enough to touch. "Mommy, who is this man?" Adaeze's breath caught. Daniel's eyes moved from Adaeze's face to the girl's, and something in his chest shattered. "Jessica," Adaeze said quietly, her voice trembling. "Go inside, please. Mommy will explain everything soon." When the girl had gone, Daniel stepped closer, his voice breaking.
15 years, Adaeze. 15 years I searched for you. My grandmother is dying. Before she died, she told me the truth was buried with my grandfather. That whatever he did it to your family. Please, I am begging you, tell me everything. Adaeze's eyes filled with tears. She sat down slowly on the wooden bench outside her shop, her hands folding in her lap like a woman finally setting down a weight she had carried alone for too long. Your grandfather, Pa Michael Okonkwo Eze, she began, her voice shaking, was not always a rich man, Daniel. 40 years ago, before the money, before the title, before the big compound, he was business partners with my own grandfather, Pa Julius. They started a small trading company together in Aba, cocoa and palm oil. And when it began to succeed, when the money started coming in, your grandfather wanted it all for himself. Daniel's jaw tightened. What did he do? He accused my grandfather of stealing from the company, had him arrested, paid the police to make the case disappear the right way, my grandfather's way, not the truthful way. Pa Julius died in that cell, Daniel. He died protesting his innocence while your grandfather took the entire company, the money, the land, and built the empire your family still sits on today. Tears streamed freely down Adaeze's face now. My grandmother was left with nothing. My own mother grew up poor, ashamed, watching the Okonkwo Eze family become the wealthiest name in the village, the very family that destroyed hers. When I met you, Daniel, I did not know who your family was at first. I fell in love with you before I ever learnt the name Okonkwo Eze. And by the time my mother told me the truth, 2 days before our wedding, I did not know what to do. I could not marry into the very family that killed my grandfather and buried the truth for 40 years. I could not stand at that altar and become mistress of a house built on my own family's blood. Daniel sank slowly onto the bench beside her, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. All these years, I thought you left because you didn't love me.
I built a wall around my heart because of that. And it wasn't even about me at all. It was never about you, Daniel. Adaeze reached out, her hand hovering before gently touching his arm. It was about a secret your family buried so deep, they let an innocent man die to protect it. I ran because I refused to be swallowed by that lie. I ran to protect the only thing I had left, the truth, and eventually, her. She glanced toward the house, toward Jessica watching quietly through the window. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes red, and for the first time, he looked toward the little girl in the doorway, his gaze softening with a realization neither of them said aloud yet. Then, let us not bury it any longer, he said finally, his voice hoarse but resolute. My grandmother wants to make things right before she dies. Let the whole village hear the truth about Pa Julius. Let your family's name be cleared after 40 years of silence. Adaeze wept, decades of grief finally breaking loose. Do you mean that? I owe you 15 years, Adaeze. I owe your grandfather his name back. It is the least this family can do. 3 weeks later, in the same compound where the wedding decorations had wilted 15 years before, Beatrice, weak but alive, sat before the assembled village and publicly confessed what her husband had done to Pa Julius 40 years earlier. The elders listened in stunned silence. Adaeze's mother, Mama Ijoma, wept into her hands as for the first time in 4 decades, her father's name was spoken with honor instead of shame. And Daniel, standing beside Adaeze and the daughter he was only beginning to know, finally understood that some truths, no matter how deeply buried, always find their way back to the light. Hey, if this story touched your heart, don't scroll past without hitting that like button. Drop a comment below and tell me, did you see that secret coming, or did it shock you like it shocked Daniel? And if you love stories like this, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next one. See you in the next story.